Hey there, thanks so much for joining into today's episode. Just a quick break to remind you that my ultimate sales bundle for Black Friday has gone live. If you are looking to create an amazing promotion that will leverage Black Friday for you, then make sure you head over to selinaknight.com/BF, like best friend, but in this case, Black Friday, selinaknight.com/BF, and grab my ultimate sales bundle to help you create a Black Friday promotion that will knock it out of the park and get your sales ringing. Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, as we go live, I have to say that this episode might be a little bit late, and that is totally my fault. In fact, the last couple of episodes have probably gone out a day or two late. Why? Because I have been a little bit / a lot behind in some of the jobs that only I can do. And as I was sitting down looking at the calendar that my team and I had built out, I realized once again that I am stopping the business from moving forward, which kind of led me into a little bit of a downward spiral because I started thinking about all of the things that I've kind of sucked at recently because there's been a lot on my plate. And of course, this leads to reflection. And upon reflection, on that reflection, I realized that there are probably 4 leadership skills, 4 leadership behaviors that I kind of find myself sucking at on a regular basis. And I really have to keep myself in check. So today's episode is going to be called, let's think about it, something like 4 leadership mistakes that I find myself constantly repeating. Now, what I will say before we jump in is the good news is, when you're aware of your own downfalls or those areas that you're not strong at, instead of getting angry and frustrated, you can actually see the situation for what it is, which is totally a result of a failure on my behalf to be the leader in my business. Because if your team aren't doing what you want them to do, there's a good chance it's actually your fault. And the thing is, people don't want to hear that. No one wants to hear that they're not doing a great job. So I decided I would just pull out the mic, record this episode, even though it is going to be a bit late. But as I look across to my whiteboard, I'm proud of the fact that everything is kind of pulling back together. And I have literally mapped out podcasts all the way through to the end of the year. So, bearing anything outside of my control, our podcasts should all go out on time, along with the promotions that we have put in place will all go out on time. And so I guess this is my first leadership fail that I find myself repeating over and over again, which is throwing my team into chaos. And this is chaos that I specifically have resulted in. It's not outside economic factors. It's not that tech has failed. It's usually because of me. And so a little bit of backstory here. Over the past few months, we have been really, really busy inside of the company. We've grown. We've brought on new people. I got a new coach. I spoke at Reed, but of course that's a team effort getting prepared for that. We had TRA Live And in amongst that is just all the general goings on that is running a business and my team doing their jobs. And so there's been a lot of doing things to deadlines. Now, I know that both myself and my team are the kinds of people who love deadlines. Like, give us a deadline, we will get stuff done. And that is fine when you have one of those short-term events. Like, say you're doing an event or short-term scenario. Say you're doing an event or a product launch. Yeah, throw things into the deep water, like run to deadlines. But you can't live on that constantly. It just it'll burn you out and it just burns your team out. So if you have listened for a while, you may have heard this story before. And I tell it at nearly all of my live events because it is one of those reminders within myself to do better, to not let these situations reoccur. And if I find myself slipping, to do something about it. Because there was a time when I made someone on my team cry. So this most beautiful soul of a person, Nell, I remember I walked into the store one day and usually I would walk in and be so excited because I'd listened to a podcast on the way in and I had my next exciting thing to do to grow the business. And I remember walking in this day, beautiful sunny day, and Nell was at the shop counter with a cup of coffee and I walked in and I said, "Oh, I've got a great idea. I was listening to a podcast on the way in." I don't even know what the rest of that sentence is. I don't even know if I finished that sentence because at that moment, her face dropped and tears start to well up in her eyes. And of course, that stopped me in my tracks. Like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, what's happened? Are you okay? And she said to me, "Sal, I can't. Like, I know that this is probably another really great idea, but I can't do anything more. Like, I have all the other great ideas that you bring in every other day on my plate, as well as, running the shop. Which one do you want me to do first? Because they're all great and I don't want to let anyone down, but I can't do anything else." And it was at that moment when I realized that I was a really crappy boss. Like, to make someone on my team cry, that's not a good leader, because they weren't good tears. They were bad tears. They were tears of frustration and tears of sadness that she might have let me down. And it was at that point I realized I had some of the best staff, best team that you'd ever imagined. And I really pride myself on being able to create a great team. But you are not a good leader if your staff are so upset that they can't live up to your expectations. And what I had realized took me a little while to work this out, was that I had imposed this self-created chaos on everyone, trying to do all of the things. And they were so keen and they were so loyal and they loved us. They loved our customers. They loved the brand, that they would do anything to see it work. But everyone has a breaking point. And that was the day that I broke Nell. And I don't ever want to have to go through that again. And I never want to put my team through that again. And so I realized that this was kind of happening again all these years later. Me being the bottleneck and me leaving things to the last minute was holding everyone else up, and it was putting other people under stress. So our amazing podcast editor, normally he has heaps of time to go and edit the podcast and get it live. But he was getting podcasts like today on a Wednesday to go out on a Friday. And he has a business too. He can't just drop everything to do our podcast. So I am so grateful, Wade, as you listen to this, for the fact that you do go above and beyond. And I am trying my best to get everything all batched up so that there is no more chaos in the podcast journey. Likewise, my team who put together the newsletter and the social media, and the beautiful Razel who cuts all of our clips and turns them into reels. They can't drop everything. I'm not their sole employer. These are all people who run their own businesses. And so they can't just drop everything because I didn't stick to a deadline or I'm leaving it to the last minute. And I would never expect them to. Sure, I totally appreciate when they do. And I'm very thankful and grateful, but I don't expect them to. If I am the reason that things are falling through the cracks, then I have to take ownership of it. And it's my job to put it right. And so even though as I record this podcast, it is hot and I would really rather be in the pool because I have already recorded several podcasts, had a couple of coaching calls and a team meeting this morning, I feel like I'm a little bit talked out, but I have to do this because I cannot keep putting my team into chaos. And so that is one of the first leadership fails that this is probably not, fail is not the right, that's really not good terminology, is it? It's one of those leadership traits that I find myself not being the strongest at. If we're going to put positive affirmations on it, because it's we're all human. There's no point dwelling on the negative. So there are things in my leadership task book that I am not always fantastic at keeping in control of. And that is the first one. It is creating chaos because I'm not in control. And with that, I guess the second one would be not being in control leads me to the fact that the next one is one that, again, I have to take complete I'm taking complete ownership for all of these. But just this morning, I accidentally discovered that someone on our contact list hadn't received any emails for 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, that's a little bit odd because we send out, at a minimum, the weekly podcast email. So the system must be broken. And so I sent a task to Joed, can you please check the system? This person didn't receive an email. And so I just happened to click through to another customer. I was like, and this person hasn't received an email since August either. The system must be broken. Urgent, urgent, urgent. Can we please have a look at the system because something isn't working? Now, the backstory out of all of this is we use a CEO dashboard. And my team all have access to put their data in it. And if you have gone through any of our programs, I gift you the same CEO dashboard that we use in our business. So I have no excuse to not know what is going on. Everybody puts their data in, and then during a weekly meeting, Joed and I go through and look at the data. Here's the thing. We've been a little bit busy. I kind of skipped that step. And not only did I discover that actually the emails never went out, the emails were never actually written. And that is just a process that broke. And I was not, had I been looking at the data like I'm supposed to, that should never have happened. And if it did, it should have only slipped once. But I overlooked it. I took my foot off of the gas and I let the team down. And it's no one else's job other than mine to make sure that those metrics are hitting KPIs. Likewise, all of my team fill out an end of day report. And I see them pop up, but things have been a little bit hectic. I haven't necessarily been reading every single one, but it is my job to read every single one. And so when some things didn't line up, when some reporting slipped, I wasn't looking at the numbers thoroughly enough. And as a result, we lost some money. We let some customers down. And that is no one else's fault other than mine, because I could quite easily blame my team and say, but you didn't follow up, but you didn't cross this task off. But at the end of the day, all the road leads back to me. I'm the boss. I'm the CEO. And I'm in charge of looking at those metrics and reading those end of day reports. Guess what? We are back to putting the time aside every single day in my calendar to looking at the numbers and looking at the reports. Looking at the data every day can lead to a lot of team frustration when you overlook it. And it sounds really silly, but one of the things I have my team do in their end of day report is they have to rank on a scale of 1 to 10 how they feel about several different areas, like how did they show up? Do they feel that they served people? Do they believe that they gave the best that they could? So I think there's 5 different areas that I ask them to rate their physiology and how they showed up. And if I'm not looking at those to see how my team are feeling, then shit can go bad really, really quickly. And I know that if those numbers hit a certain level, I need to do an intervention. I have to find out what happened. And sometimes it can be a really simple thing. Everyone can have a bad day. Maybe a customer came and said something a bit nasty to you, and you didn't react in the way that you would have liked to. Or maybe someone's sales targets are down and they're feeling a little bit deflated. It is my job as the leader to be in there to manage what they feel in terms of how they show up in the business. And if they aren't feeling fantastic, if they aren't coming to work and turning up and serving our customers in the best way possible, then it doesn't do anyone any favors. It doesn't do our customers any favors, and it doesn't do them any favors. No one wants to finish the day feeling a bit crap. And so, again, even though I've been checking it, I was maybe not being as thorough. And so today I went on a whirlwind, checking in with everybody and making sure that if they were feeling a little bit down, if they were feeling a little bit deflated, we worked through it. We looked at ways we could get some quick wins and set up a plan. And we'll report back on that one tomorrow. These are things that it doesn't take an awful lot to slip out of the habit of. And feeling overwhelmed, which is how I have felt. We've had so much on, bringing in new team members, having to create training and onboarding for those people. We've just changed ad agencies. Like, I can find all the excuses in the world for why I let it slip through the cracks. But at the end of the day, these are things that I know that history has a habit of repeating. And I know where the outcome is if I don't take hold of it really, really quickly. As the dots started lining up and I realized several of these things were happening, I knew that I had to give myself my own intervention. So that first part of creating chaos quite often is a result of not looking at the data. And I know, no, it's not sexy. No one wants to sit down and look at numbers every day. But on our team meetings, when we talk about this stuff, it is so surprising at how fostering a culture of openness and engagement can literally change people's lives. And if you guys aren't doing team meetings, I strongly, strongly suggest that you start doing them, even if they're just 5 or 10 minutes, because it really makes your team feel part of a team. And if you are not looking at the data, please put the time aside to do it, because the data's just numbers. But what they are is a reflection of what has happened. And so I just recorded a podcast this morning. I'm not sure if it will go live next week or maybe a bit later. And it's called something like Money is Just a Story and You Get to Write the Next Chapter. That's just data as well. Data is just a story. The numbers at the end of the day, your customer tracker, your sales numbers, your CEO dashboard, just numbers. It's just data. And it's just going to show you what has happened historically. And the great thing is you get to change what tomorrow looks like. You are the one who can pull the levers. You can say, it's not going to be like that tomorrow, or we're going to do more of that tomorrow. If it is going really, really well, pump it up. If the numbers aren't reflecting the story that you want to see, change the story, change the narrative. You're writing the book here. You're the author. You get to choose the adventure. And so data shouldn't be seen as a hard slog or something that you have to make time for. What you should be thinking of it as, how exciting. We get to change tomorrow just by looking at the numbers. I know that's a little bit woo, but trust me, when I actually do this, I feel so much more empowered, which is silly because if it makes me feel empowered, why did I stop doing it in the first place? And the answer to that is because when things are going well, you feel like you can just let it slide. But the minute that you let it slide is when it all starts to go backwards. And sometimes that might be a couple of days, sometimes it might be a couple of weeks, and sometimes it might be a couple of months. But you can't afford to wait months to fix a problem. And you can't afford to wait months to leverage something that is doing amazingly, because everyone misses out if you take your eye off the ball. Alrighty. Speaking of my amazing team, the next one is all about them. And the next one is probably quite controversial. And it is one that I do find myself slipping into. And it's one that you might not agree with. But here's what I can tell you after being business for 17 years and having hired so many people, that as the leader of your business, as the CEO, you can be friendly with your team, but you can't be friends with your team. They are two very, very different scenarios. And here's why I say that. Because you let friends get away with stuff because they're friends. But your team shouldn't be allowed to get away with stuff. They have to be accountable. And you don't hold your friends accountable. Like, you think about it, if your friend turns up late to lunch, you might joke about it, but you don't hold them accountable. In business, everybody has their role to play. And if someone isn't being held accountable, then it can go pear-shaped. This all connects back together with that self-imposed, self-created chaos and the not looking at the data. I did this. I was turning up to the calls. We were having a chat. We were laughing. We were talking about our weekend. And it was kind of, it's really easy to move into the friend zone. But that's not what your team need. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you 100% can be friendly. You can be empathetic. You can talk about your weekend. But at the end of the day, your team have to have that little bit of separation. Because without that separation, without that defining line of, look, I'm the boss and you work for me, then when that line gets blurry, that is when you stop looking at KPIs. You stop holding people accountable to hit targets and you make excuses for them. But this is business, and your business is a tool to make money. And when you start letting things slide, the money disappears. The customers stop coming in. The customer experience drops. And that is not what you want for your business. So 100% be human and 100% be nice. But there's a caveat coming. But you also have to be in control and you have to be a leader. And that means being friendly and not actually being friends with your team. I know. Feel free to message me on that one and we can have a debate on it. I'm sure that one is going to ruffle some feathers. But I know that every time I have crossed over that line, that is when stuff goes pear-shaped. That is when I stop feeling okay with assigning tasks, or let's call it what it is. We're giving orders. I know that we don't give orders. We do assign tasks. We do make people be responsible for their actions. We do have targets and KPIs in place and position descriptions and holding people accountable, all of those things. That's not what you do with your friends, but it is what you have to do with your team. So sometimes being nice leads me to my next leadership area that I find that I constantly find myself repeating. It's really hard not to use the word mistake. My 4 leadership mistakes that I find myself constantly falling into the trap of. The first one was creating chaos. The second one was overlooking the data every single day. The next one was being friends with my team rather than being friendly with my team. And then my last one comes down to something that I see over and over again with the retailers and the e-commerce store owners that come through our programs. And that is, you are all too freaking nice for your own good. Yep. Say it like it is, Sal. Being nice is often the thing that I find holds a business back when the business owner is too nice. And a lot of those things that we've just talked about, holding your team accountable, being friends instead of friendly, that is where the nice overshadows what you need to do to grow your business. So my last leadership fail that I find myself repeating over and over again is keeping relationships when we've outgrown each other. Now, I don't know about you, but I have two friends from high school. I'm in my late 40s now that I am friends with on Facebook. We don't hang out. We don't really chat. We're just friends on Facebook. I'm also friends with one of my teachers from high school on Facebook. But there are different people for different seasons of your life. I even think back to my wedding. And even though we only had 20 people at our wedding, 3 of those people were our housemates. And so, we don't even see them anymore. We don't communicate with them, but they were important in our lives at that particular moment. And I don't feel bad that I don't communicate with them anymore because we were friends because of circumstances. And the circumstance was that we lived in the same share house, just like you were friends with your high school friends because of circumstances, because you went to school together. You might be friends with your neighbors because you live in the same street. It is okay to let people go. And I know that because you are too nice, just like the situation I found myself in where I kept one of our agencies for too long. I made this same mistake not 6 or 7 months ago, where once again, it was a completely different agency, but I held on to them for too long because they were nice. The simple fact was they weren't performing. And it got to the point where I was so anxious in our conversations that I was trying to avoid them and my heart would speed up and I would feel like I was going to vomit. I mean, someone who is working for you should not have that effect on you. But because they weren't performing, I would physically feel sick paying them. But they were really nice when I would get on my Zoom meetings with them. And they are really lovely people. The simple fact was we'd outgrown each other. They got me to a certain point in the business, but now it took off and we're moving to the next level and they weren't able to perform at that next level. And as try as they might, it just didn't work. And this happens in our friendships. It even happens in our families. I know that there are people in our family who we maybe see once a year because they feel very threatened by the fact that we've achieved, their version of success. And that's not something they feel happy about. Whether they feel inferior or whether they're jealous, I'm not sure. I don't know what they're feeling. And it's disappointing to know that your family aren't excited for you and can't celebrate with you when great things happen, but they're family. So, you just got to deal with it. And you got to take it when it comes and just be happy that when they turn up, they're going to be there and this is the way they go to it. So just enjoy it while you can. The same thing happens with our team. Now, I haven't let anyone on the team go for quite a while. In fact, we've actually been hiring. But if you remember back to, I think I did a podcast maybe in March where I talked about outgrowing the people around you. And that happens. And I think I wouldn't be the first person to say that I've kept people on my team for longer than I probably should have because they were nice, because I had probably become friends with them to a degree and I didn't want to hurt them. But when we flip that, when you think about if somebody is turning up every single day and they're not achieving their potential because the business has outgrown them, so they're turning up and they're feeling like even though they're putting all the effort in, they're not hitting the goals that you want them to hit, or they feel a bit silly or they feel a bit dumb. Like I've heard that before. It's like, I feel like I'm dumb now. I don't understand what's going on. I don't ever want somebody to come to work and feel like they're useless or they've fallen behind. That doesn't do anyone any favors. And so the reality is if you hit that point in your business where there isn't a position for someone anymore, then you have to be the leader and let them go. And I know personally, I've reached out to other companies and said, I've got this amazing employee who I think would be great for you. Are you hiring? And they've moved to a better job, one that lights them up, one that really invigorates them rather than dreading coming to work every single day. But by the same token, these are relationships. Maybe it's a supplier relationship. Maybe you have a relationship with a supplier who's always late. And as a result, you can never get your product launches out, or you can't get hold of the stock when you need it. But it's a great product, so you just deal with it. I don't know. I feel like now is the time where you say, I'm no longer just going to deal with it. Like, I want a business that doesn't stress me out. I want a business that actually I enjoy turning up every day, whether it's in person or online. I want a business where my team are in control of the things that they're there to manage. And my job is to look at the data. My job is to make sure that they're turning up and they feel fantastic, and that the workplace that I'm providing is keeping them stimulated, and it's keeping them well paid, of course. That's what people turn up to work for. And so maybe you found yourself falling into some of these leadership fails as well. Maybe you find yourself creating chaos because you're not organized. Sam, our social media girl, said to me, you are like one of the most organized people I know. Everything is in the project management software. And do you know what? This all stems back to that original conversation with Nell, because that was the moment that I realized I wasn't going to do this again. And sure, I find myself slipping, but we have project management software so that we can be accountable, so that I can see when I am being the bottleneck. So the team can see if somebody else is relying on them. The organization that we have is a sole output of making Nell cry that day, because I don't want it to happen. And sure, sometimes I find myself slipping, but the fact that we have project management software, the fact that we have dates when things have to be completed by, it makes it really glaringly obvious when I am letting the team down, and when the team are letting each other down. The data stuff, it is boring. It is not sexy, but man, is it empowering. It is so empowering. And it's actually really exciting for me to look and see what's happened and know that we can change that future tomorrow. We can put some goals in place. We can put some short-term targets. One of the things we did today was set a goal to do one extra sale by the end of the week. Simple things, right? But it's a little bit fun. It's a little bit exciting. And knowing that when you put that element of gamification in place into the data, then everybody wins. The being friends versus friendly. I don't know. This one I would really love to hear your opinions on. Because if you are anything like me, you value your team so highly, and you know that you wouldn't have a business without them. But where do you draw the line? Like, it's easy to be the boss bitch, but it is also very easy to just be one of the team. And what I have learned is being one of the team actually eats away at the respect that your team have for you, rather than empowering and giving you that positioning of somebody to follow, someone who creates the vision and takes everybody along for the ride. And lastly, being nice and keeping those relationships well past their use by date. I know for me, that has cost me literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars just when it comes to working relationships. And I'm the only one to blame for that. There's a point where you have to stop being nice and look at what is the overall best decision for the business. And if that means letting somebody go, then that's just business. That is you being the CEO. And quite often it's for the best for everyone. Okay, with that, I have another call lined up, and I'm very proud of myself for getting this podcast squeezed in between a whole bunch of other things. But guess what? I had a deadline, and it's in the project management software. And as a result, I got it done. And moving forward, I am going to try my best not to be the bottleneck for the team. I am going to get these podcasts batched up so that Wade and the team can do their jobs. And I'm going to try and remove as much chaos as possible. I've already let the agency go, and I'm super excited about working with our new agency. And my team are amazing. And I tell them every single day, and you know what? They probably don't actually want to be friends with me anyway. They just like hanging out with me when the time comes. So let me know if you're listening to this episode and you agree or disagree. I would love to hear what you have to say on the matter. Or is there some other leadership trait that you find yourself like constantly repeating, falling into the trap of, and having to catch yourself? Because at the end of the day, it's the catching yourself you need to be proud of. Because if you can do that before it all goes sideways, then that is actually the true indication of a leader. And that's what you are in your business. Alrighty. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could leave me a review. I'm super crap at asking for that. So leave me a review. Help everybody out there to find the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. And I will see you next week. Hey there. Thanks so much for joining into today's episode. Just a quick break to remind you that my ultimate sales bundle for Black Friday has gone live. If you are looking to create an amazing promotion that will leverage Black Friday for you, then make sure you head over to selinaknight.com/BF, like best friend, but in this case, Black Friday, selinaknight.com/BF, and grab my ultimate sales bundle to help you create a Black Friday promotion that will knock it out of the park and get your sales ringing. Alrighty, selinaknight.com/BF. I will see you next week. So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelinaKnight and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.